everyone, this is Liz Easton, and I wanted to take a quick second to invite you to listen in to the PC Book Club. Wait, I need to start again. Hi, everyone. This is Liz Easton, and I wanted to take a quick second to invite you to listen to the PC Book Club, aka PCBC. Every so often, Ricardo Avila and I chat about the books that you should be reading right now. It's just like sitting on your own private book club discussion, only there's probably slightly more references to true crime and Charles Dickens. I did not write this.
We may have to re-record that anyway, because I think you just said it's just like sitting on your own private book club.
She did. That was great. Sitting on a book club. Sitting on a private book club. That's pretty racy. Sorry.
Should I try again? It's just like sitting in on your own private book club discussion, only there's probably slightly more references to true crime and Charles Dickens. So if you're looking for the class with an occasional dose of the sass, then check out the PC Book Club right here on the Popping Collars feed. Class and sass.
Love it.
I was praying to the Lord for some fun.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Knight, and I like watching, thinking about, and talking about movies. One of the great things about starting your own podcast is that there are some days when you actually get to talk to the creators of those movies. This is one of those days. This month, I got the chance to talk to Titus Kaphar, the director of a new film called Exhibiting Forgiveness. Letterboxd.com will tell you that utilizing his paintings to find freedom from his past, a black artist on the path to success is derailed by an unexpected visit from his estranged father, a recovering addict desperate to reconcile. Together, they learn that forgetting might be a greater challenge than forgiving. What I'll tell you is that this is an intimate look at art, masculinity, fatherhood, anger, grief, care, and reconciliation. It's clearly a passion project for this young filmmaker, and he digs into generational hurt and healing. So, what happens when an artist uses multiple disciplines to paint a moving portrait of a family looking for a way to move forward? Find out as I keep things under the stole with Titus Kaphar. But before we chat, here's a trailer for the film.
Shadows on the wall. Noises down the hall. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Mean old Mother Goose. Lions on the loose. They don't frighten me at all. Dragons breathing flame on my counterpane. That doesn't frighten me at all. I go boo, make them shoot. I make fun the way they run. Life doesn't frighten me at all.
Mama Joyce! Oh my God!
Hello.
I ain't seen you for 15 years, but now you want to be somebody's granddaddy? You somebody's daddy right now?
I don't want him to hear this.
Listen, I need you to speak to him. I need you to talk to him.
No.
He has changed.
He ain't changed.
It's just gonna follow us home if you don't deal with it here.
Let's get it.
He gave me you, Terrell. He was my first love. He was my first love.
Man, you got flaws, Terrell. Ain't you got flaws? I'm not the same man you used to know before, Terrell. That's what you said, right? Why are you still making excuses for him?
If you don't forgive others of their past sins, then you can't be forgiven.
Have you asked yourself one time, what's best for us? For him, for your grandson?
This ain't about him. It's about Mama.
How we do it, how we do it, brick by by brick, that's how we move.
I put it on canvas so that I could hold it by the throat.
A foundation built with bricks that we were never given.
Yeah, let's do it. So I always start these conversations off the same way. And with you, I'm actually really interested because of your background as an artist. What was the moment or the event that happened in your life that made you think, like, this is what I want to do? I want to make art. I want to create stuff.
I always hesitate when people ask me that question because I don't know. I think I want the answer to be like deep and philosophical or something. But the truth is, I got into art because there was a girl I wanted to go out with.
Yep.
Like
that's how I started going to church. So I get it.
Exactly. Those youth groups were not about Bible studies at all. Anyway. So, you know, there's this woman that I had met. She was a bit older than me. She was 4 years older than me. She had just graduated college. I was just out of high school, not even thinking about college. I was in a rock band at the time. In fact, she actually was going to a Bible study at a group that I was at, and it was a college group, and I was college age, so I was going to this thing, and I just thought she was great. But she was like, "Look, you're a really nice guy. I really think you're a nice guy, but you're not thinking about your future at all." So I kind of got things to do. So I ran down to the junior college that week, registered for some classes, came back and said, "I'm thinking about my future now. Do you want to go out?" And she thought it was funny, and we started going out. And randomly, I had registered for some art classes, some art history classes. I didn't know anything about art history. But when I got into that class, I realized that my visual intelligence had never been asked of me in any class I had ever taken before. And so, you know, whereas in high school, my GPA was 0.65, and the reason I graduated high school was because they were sick of seeing me. I got into this class and I got a B in that class, and it blew my mind. Up until that point, I pretty much thought I was just not a very smart person.
Right.
But as I said, it was just because I hadn't figured out how to tap into my own brain. It turns out that my brain is very visual. And if I can figure out the visual aspect of it, I can learn whatever I need to learn. So after taking that art history class, I took another art history class, another art history class. And then finally, I took a painting class. And that was the moment I said, I don't want to do anything else. This is for me.
Yeah, that makes me wonder, because I've always wondered this, especially as visual artists, and the way that you approach this in the film too, with Terrell and the way that he does his art. Like, is when you think about art, is it about sort of you know, you have this image in your brain and you just need to get it out onto a canvas, whatever that is, or is it that you're sort of peeling away at what's already there and you're just trying to reveal something that already exists? It just hasn't been created yet.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. For me, I like being in a space where I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. So I generally start, I might have a little bit of an idea of a sketch, but I don't reproduce the sketch. I'm not trying to make that exact same thing. I discovered really early on that it's in that space of not knowing that I can actually surprise myself and go beyond myself. If I sit here and plan out every single aspect of it, I know exactly what's going to happen. But when I go into those moments where, like, I don't know, it feels weird, but I think I'm going to cut a hole in the center of this painting. Makes no sense to me, but let's see. And when that happens, you take these risks and you lose some, you definitely lose some. But when they work, it inevitably opens doors to creativity that you just didn't even know were there. It just becomes another room for you to explore.
Yeah, the other thing, and I want to get into sort of the forgiveness aspects of the movie and the interpersonal dynamics and all that stuff. But just one last thing on the artistic side, which is, it just so happens that when I watched your movie, I had just seen, what was it, 1001 with Tiana Taylor recently.
Yeah.
And I think I had just watched Poetic Justice with Janet Jackson and stuff.
Wow.
And I was just thinking about this idea of like singers and what it is that they bring to their roles. When you were working with Audra Day, like what is she able to bring into that character from her music background that sort of makes that part sing, for lack of a better word?
This answer is going to be strange, but it's true. If you've only seen Andra Day on stage, or you've only seen her in videos, you don't know her. It's easy to really see her as a kind of diva, and she's absolutely beautiful. But there's a prayerfulness about her that people don't know at all. She does a devotional before every single scene.
Wow.
Every scene. Before we go into a difficult scene, she makes us pray. Like, people don't know about her spiritual walk, but she is serious. She is devoted. And so there was a energy and a power and a prayerfulness about her and her character that she brought to the character of Aisha. She is at once kind and funny and strong, and that is what she brought to that character too. There are moments where it's very clear that she is setting up a boundary and she is not allowing someone to cross that boundary. And so I'm excited to see her in more things. I just think she's more talented than people even understand.
Oh my gosh. Dude, she should have won an Oscar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that is just like that she brought to the set, she always is singing. She's always singing. So she walks from one room to another room, she's singing. You know, sometimes it's a hymn, sometimes it's her song. She's always singing. So we would be on set, we'd be shooting, and there's people in the background murmuring, doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden she opens her mouth and starts singing. Set silent. Absolutely silent. The problem is nobody wants to work anymore. Everybody just like bending an ear, trying to get a glimpse of what she's singing. It's pretty amazing to work with her. She was fantastic.
Hey, so your film, I mean, it's about art, and that's why I wanted to start this conversation that way, but it's also about this relationship between a boy and his father, that's sort of at the heart of it. And I got to tell you, as someone who's come from an abuse background and stuff like that, there were a lot of things that resonated for me with this story, and so I just want to thank you for putting it on film. A question for you with regards to this idea of forgiveness and this idea of reconciliation. It seemed like there was so much at stake for Terrell's mom to make that connection. What do you think was driving that character to want to see that reconciliation between Terrell and his father?
I mean, first of all, Greg, I just want to say thank you for that, for you being vulnerable and sharing that. I think that sometimes when people see a film where the cast is, just all Black characters, it becomes very easy to think, oh, that's a Black film, that's not for me, or something like that. And that hasn't been our experience of the film. We showed the film in Birmingham. It was one of the most diverse audiences we've shown it in front of. And I got to tell you, people from all races were coming up to me saying, that's my story. That was my father too. So I really, really, really do appreciate that. There's a way in which sometimes, films that have Black actors in them don't get to be a universal story. And what you've just said is really heartwarming, because you're saying that in fact they can be. So if you watch the film again, what you'll notice is that the mom is actually hiding something the entire time. She knows she may not have long. A little bit of a spoiler alert, I suppose. She knows she doesn't have long. And what she wants most in the world is to get her family back together at all costs, frankly. That came from a conversation that I had with my mom, where I was talking to her and I said, Mom, like, he has done all of these horrible things to you, to us, to the family. Why do you want to get back with him?" And she said, I still love him. And I was just confounded, just like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. And then she said, well, I always kind of hope that, like, if you like reconcile with him, then maybe he will reconcile with me, and then we could be a family. And I was appalled and brokenhearted all at the same time. And so there was a lot at stake for the characters, a lot at stake for my mother, frankly. And it wasn't, in fact, until she saw the film and saw Ingenue's portrayal of her. Actually, it's a kind of a conflation of her and my grandmother. But it wasn't until she saw it on the screen that she said, I understand now. I see it now. And there's a way in which movies have the power to do that. When we actually make movies that have realistic characters, not caricatures, but realistic characters, there's a cathartic thing that can happen for us. We can see ourselves on that screen, and we can actually make decisions about how we'll move on in our lives as a result of that. That doesn't happen if you just allow Hollywood just to make the same kind of flat caricatures of all kinds of people, Black people, white people, brown people, whatever. If they're not real, we can't really connect with them.
Yeah, and that's the thing that that I loved, right? Was that you never really let Laurent off the hook, right? Like, there was this, we meet him at a later moment in his life, but you're constantly sort of flashing back to what it is that Terrell remembers, sort of the monstrous sort of masculinity that's hiding underneath all of that stuff. And I appreciated that, because if, what that helps do is contextualize how Terrell sees him, right? It's like, I see him as this sort of broken man now, but that's not that's not how he lives in my brain, right?
Yeah.
I wonder, do you think that there's something generationally, because I'm looking at you, it seems like I'm was like born in the 70s, 80s. So do you think that there's something generational about those men that were coming out of the 60s, 70s, and how it was that they thought to raise us as to sort of a way to toughen us for the world?
Do you remember that scene in the truck when they're driving as adults together?
Yeah.
It's kind of a parallel of the youth, but they're driving as adults together, and they're going back and forth. And Laurent is like, I had to put steel in you, boy. You remember how this neighborhood was, right? And towards the end of it, Terrell says, I hear you in my head. And sometimes when my son does something, it scares me because I almost do what you did to me. And what I realize is sometimes Jermaine just needs to cry. We weren't allowed that. Our generation of men weren't allowed that. Like, if you started crying, you were immediately told to stop crying, no matter how hurt you were. And so what we learned is to suppress all of that.
Right.
And so they taught us that because their fathers taught them that. Mm-hmm. My father, that scene in the basement where he's talking about, like, Laurent is talking about how vicious his father was to him. That whole scene is really about Laurent saying, look, I forgave my father. Can't you forgive me? If I can forgive my father for all of that crazy stuff, can't you forgive me for this? Because Laurent, doesn't know any other way to be. And he is in many ways just as much a victim of the circumstance as he is as he is the person who is actually inflicting the pain. Mm-hmm. So the reality is, writing this film taught me compassion for my father in a way that I just didn't have before.
Yeah.
If you sit down to write a character, you Greg, you were talking about how like we see Laurent at these different places. That was very conscious for me, because if you sit down to write a character, and you're going to be honest, you have to recognize that people who do bad things don't think they're bad.
Right.
They don't think they're bad. They're trying to do the best that they can do. So you've got to ask yourself as a writer, what motivates this action? Why is he doing the things he's doing? As a young man, I never asked myself that about my father. I never asked myself that about my father. He was just the villain of my narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I realize now he is not, and it is through this process of writing that I realize that he is not. This is not to excuse the craziness that I experienced, the crazy things that I saw. It just, as an adult, helps me have a little bit more compassion for that. That doesn't have to mean, I say that, and I want to be very clear, that doesn't have to mean for people who've gone through this sort of thing. It doesn't have to mean that your past will continue going the same direction, but it does give you the opportunity to forgive. And the kind of forgiveness I'm talking about is the kind of forgiveness that says, I'm not carrying this burden anymore. This is too heavy. It's exhausting. I'm putting it down, and you owe me nothing. There's no debt. You harmed me. I release you from that. It's done. I forgive you, but I'm going that direction and you're going that direction. And that is perfectly okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a closure moment, right? Because like you still have this person exists in the world. Like there's still that potential for relationship or non-relationship, whatever it is, right? I'm wondering, like, if Terrell never goes down this path, if he never sort of, if his mom's like, you've got to reconcile, and he's like, you know what, that's just not for me. Like, is there something that's always going to be a little afraid inside of him? He's never going to be able to claim that power, that courage going forward.
So I'm a father.
Yeah.
I have sons. My oldest son is 17. My youngest son is 15 years old. I would not have done this project if it wasn't for them. I was terrified, and I have been terrified of passing on the trauma that was passed on to me to my sons.
That's good.
That's the only reason I started this process, man. I don't want another generation to have to deal with this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just not, I don't want that. And for my children's younger life, they would ask me about my relationship with my father. And I would say, I'll tell you more when you're older. I'll tell you more when you're older. And I just never got into it because some of this stuff is dark. And now as my son is going off to college, I want him to have a different understanding of what it means to be a man in this world. It doesn't mean the kind of like the shoving down of your emotions that I was taught. It does
suck
mean
it up, rub dirt on it. Yeah, all that stuff.
Exactly. Walk it off,
Mm-hmm.
like that is not what it means. There's a moment in the film where Terrell says, you judge a man by the way that he takes care of his family. And that to me is what I want my children to understand, that kind of care, that kind of compassion, and that your emotions are not to be avoided. Your emotions are actually a power that'll take you deeper into relationship. So that was the reason why I decided to go down this route. I mean, it definitely wasn't because I wanted to work in Hollywood. That's for sure. That's not the reason I did this at all. Let's be crystal clear.
It's like running away to the circus a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I'm going back home.
No, but no, I think that's good, man. I mean, I was wondering, and I'm glad that we got into it a little bit because I was like, there does seem to be, whenever you're dealing with relationships that feel this defined, there's that hint of autobiography behind it, you know. And so I was curious. I was like, I'm sure that there's something in Titus's past that he's got this going on.
Yeah.
I've only got a couple of minutes left, and I kind of just want to get you out on a note because I'm always curious about what it is that people see, what it is that they look for in the world. So if there's anything, is there anything that you've seen lately that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person's doing this. It inspires me to want to do more stuff.
Yeah, actually, it's a little bit of a older movie, but it's kind of my go-to. I've seen it so many times. There's a few of them, but there's a film called 9 Days. I don't know if you've seen that film.
I think I remember 9 Days.
Yeah, it's a really, really beautiful film. It's kind of like this analogy about how we are chosen to be alive. And it's this whole sequence of things that happens over a 9-day period, which is a sort of, I don't know, an analogy, a metaphor, or whatever for the 9 months that we are in our mothers, right? It's a beautiful.
Yes, I talked to the director of this movie. Oh my gosh, that movie was beautiful.
And what I mean, for me, that film was actually really inspirational. The scenes where we have an artist, right? He was in theater and he wanted to give people this life opportunities. What you didn't get to be chosen, but this is what it would have felt like. And so he creates this kind of stage where they get to experience life for just a moment. That was incredibly inspirational to me in the process of making Exhibiting Forgiveness.
Yeah, that's cool. I love it, man. Hey, congratulations on the movie. Thank you so much for this. Like it was obviously it meant a lot to me. Hope that a ton of people check it out.
October 18th.
Yeah. So is it streaming? Is it in theaters? Where can people find it?
It's in theaters nationwide, October 18th. And I'm asking people to please come out. I know the pandemic kind of stopped us from going to movies a little bit. But the reality is if we don't show Hollywood that we actually want these kinds of films by showing up, they're going to continue giving us the stuff that they're giving us.
Exactly. Listen, man, stop going to Deadpool. Go check out Exhibiting Forgiveness instead. Titus, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, Greg. Thank you so much, man.